big news this week is that the Reserve Bank has surprised many economists by lifting interest rates a little bit ahead of when many thought that they might. Interest rates paused last month, and a lot of people thought that might have been the end of interest rate increases, but a large number of us were predicting at least one more interest rate rise, with the timing a little bit uncertain. Most of the banks hadn't anticipated that the Reserve Bank would increase interest rates in May. There's a number of reasons why they chose to do so, which I'm going to look at today. And I'm also going to look into and share my thoughts on what this means for the future with interest rates, as well as how it's going to impact the economy and the housing market. And as you know, with these things, with these foresight reports, we love to look into the future. There's other organizations that do a great job of looking at the data of what's happened in the past in terms of house prices. You can get great stats from CoreLogic, SQM, and a number of others on the current median house price and what's changed in the last month. But for property investors to get ahead, you really need to be looking into the future. So you need to know what's going on, what are the drivers of the market, and that's exactly what we'll be looking at today as well. So interest rates, as I said, surprised many with the Reserve Bank surprised many with their interest rate rise earlier this week. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the ASX 30-day interbank cash rate implied futures yield curve. For those that haven't seen one of my reports before, this is actually the forecast of, I guess, interest rates and the rate that banks are exchanging money at into the future. So it's a good indicator of where they think interest rates will be in the months ahead. This is from last week, and you can see that interest rates were around the 3.6% mark, forecast to get up to about 3.85 or 3.8 in September at the peak, and then start coming down to, I guess, finish at around $3.40 or thereabouts. That was a week ago. Then interest rates went up earlier than anyone was predicting. So the market is still anticipating that interest rates won't go above 4. You can see the curve actually goes up slightly. That's because some economists at banks are anticipating, and money market managers are anticipating that there may be a small chance of another interest rate rise. What's really interesting about this is the forecast at the end of the period. So by October 2024, the anticipation is that interest rates will be down at around $3.29. Now, that's obviously not an exact science because this is made up of averages of average transactions on futures. But right now, the 3-year government bond yield is at 3.04%. So that's a pretty solid indicator of where the market thinks interest rates are going to be over the next couple of years. So again, market's anticipating we're at very, very close to the peak, and that interest rates are likely to come down over the next 18 months. I wouldn't put my money on interest rates coming down, but certainly I think the outlook is a lot better than if we go back 6 months ago, when this curve was actually showing a really sharp rise and a lot of uncertainty around where it would peak and anticipation that it might go over $4.50. Now, why have they chosen to put up interest rates? One of them is because of the change of the board. We have a board member, Dr. Ian Ross, coming in on the 7th of May. So that's obviously this week. So the last thing the Reserve Bank wants is for a new board member to come in, and their very first meeting after replacing an outgoing board member having to have an influence on interest rates going up. So it made sense that they wanted to get that decision out of the way a little bit earlier. We also have Miss Alana Rubin coming in August. So at the end of August, we have another Reserve Bank board member exiting to be replaced by Miss Rubin. And in September, Dr. Philip Lowe's tenure is up for review. So it's uncertain whether he's going to continue as the governor of the Reserve Bank board. So in the next few months, there's going to be a lot of changes in the structure of the Reserve Bank board. That's going to make it difficult for them to put interest rates up over the next few months, which is one of the reasons why they've brought that decision forward, and kind of just hoping that they can nip in the bud any I guess, things driving inflation. I'm going to look into the detail in terms of how they're justifying, because they certainly don't talk about this in their speech. But in terms of things that would be driving that decision behind the scenes, let's have a good look at that. One of those is skills demand. So we have a very low job vacancy rate right now, is still at around 3.5%. That's exceptionally low. And there's around 450,000 unfilled jobs right now in Australia. Those jobs, you can see where they're spread out around Australia, but you can see it's staying very high in New South Wales and Queensland. There's been a bit of a pullback in Western Australia and in Victoria in the last couple of months in terms of jobs demand, but certainly extremely high jobs demand. And what does that lead to? It leads to population growth. So our population is growing faster now than it was pre-COVID. We've had a huge inflow of international students and people moving into Australia, chasing those jobs as well. So that's having a huge impact on the economy with all of that extra population growth. And we can see where that's settling right now. We're seeing Queensland having the lion's share of it in terms of total population growth, with around 114,000 people moving to Queensland over the last 12 months. They've actually had more people in terms of total growth in Queensland than either New South Wales or Victoria, despite the fact that Queensland's population is a lot less than New South Wales and Victoria's. In percentage terms, it's absolutely smashing it out of the park. So Queensland's our fastest growing state by far, followed by Western Australia in percentage terms. So again, you can see Western Australia is benefiting from net overseas migration and net interstate migration as well as a natural increase. We're also seeing New South Wales and Victoria starting to catch up. We're seeing really strong net overseas migration as well. So if it wasn't for that drain of people moving out of New South Wales and Victoria and into Queensland and Western Australia, they'd obviously be growing at an incredible pace as well. And we'll probably start to see those trends shifting a little bit in the months ahead. Now, when we look at housing supply, you can see here that weekly rental listings have been very low since early 2022. So for the last year, we've had an exceptionally low rental vacancy rate all around Australia. And that's obviously going to get worse with that added population growth that we're seeing. And obviously, it's not consistent right across the board in terms of the same number, but everywhere is low. All of the major cities are around the 1% or below. And some cities are actually in the low decimals in terms of the vacancy rate. So 0.4, 0.5% vacancy rate. A 3% vacancy rate is considered a healthy market where there's a good balance of supply and demand. So 0.4 to 1% is extremely low. So that's why we're seeing stories in the media about the housing crisis. And that's leading to rapidly rising rents. So rents have been going up at the top end of the market. It started to taper a little bit as people are shifting and trying to find more affordable accommodation. But the affordable end of the market, rents are rising even faster. So it's going to get harder and harder to get into the rental market at the bottom end. We're seeing rents going up exceptionally quickly. Some cities as much as 19% to 20% in a year. But pretty much across the board, all around Australia, we're seeing strong rental growth. And that's going to get worse for tenants, unfortunately, because housing starts, as you can see here, in terms of dwelling units approved, are actually diminishing. So we had a very big spike post-COVID with the home builder, but that quickly fell away. And now we're back to levels of building approvals that we haven't seen since 2012 and 13. So we're trending lower. It's likely to continue falling. Things like the Porter Davis collapse, which is very public, actually spook a lot of people out of signing new building contracts. Also, the higher cost of construction and talk of inflation in the media has scared people away from building new homes, which is obviously natural in terms of the psychology. But what a lot of people don't realise is that between 2015 and 2017, there was on average about 1,500 insolvencies in the construction sector every year. So insolvencies in construction are not a new thing. It's just very much in the media. And Porter Davis is a very large builder, so it's obviously going to get a lot of attention. It's the most high-profile builder that we've seen go under. And that's going to mean less people starting to build a new home over the next 6 to 12 months. And that's going to have a further impact on that housing undersupply. So rents are going to go up faster and faster over the next couple of years. It's not going to get any easier to find a property for tenants, unfortunately. Now, we're seeing as well, and this is the other thing the RBA would be concerned about, is that wages growth is picking up. It's still below 3.5%. You can see back in 2012, it was actually at 3.5%. So this is not an exceptionally high number in terms of wages growth, but what they'd be mindful of is that it's going up. And as I said earlier, they may not have another chance to tackle interest rates in the next couple of months, unless it was really cut and dry. But if it's line ball, they're going to err on the side of caution and leave interest rates where they are because of those changes of roles. So they wanted to just get on top of it. And obviously they're concerned about public sector wages growth because there is a lot of pressure on the government from unions and other parties interested around the country, wanting public sector wages to be going up at least as fast as inflation. And inflation, obviously, over the last year was over 7%. So there's a bit of wage pressure there. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see that inflation itself, goods inflation, has been coming down for the last few months. But at the same time, services inflation is on the way up. What does that mean? Well, services, obviously, I think it's pretty obvious what services entails for the most part. But what a lot of people don't realize is that services inflation also includes rents. Now, we know that residential rents are rising faster and they're going to continue to escalate. And that goes into that services inflation figure. So that's going to keep a little bit of upwards pressure. Can interest rates stop rents from rising? I don't think so. In fact, as interest rates have gone up, that's also had an impact that slowed down the number of new homes that are getting built. So higher interest rates actually reduces supply of housing in the future, which puts upwards pressure on rents, especially with a low vacancy rate. Landlords are more likely to pass on their higher interest costs to tenants and seek the maximum rent that they can achieve. So again, we're going to keep our eye on that services inflation, but it's important to understand what's behind it because the RBA has very little hope to address that rising rent. The other thing that's on the RBA's mind is consumer sentiment. Now, when consumers have positive sentiment, so above 100 on the index, they're more likely to go and spend money in the economy. When sentiment is low, they want to save money because they're saving up for a rainy day. The outlook might not be great. You can see here that sentiment has been down around GFC levels over the last couple of years or last couple of months, and it started to spike in April. So the RBA, again, concerned about that spike in sentiment because you can see historically that once sentiment spikes up, it actually breaks out of that low band really quickly. And this is called the worst is over effect. Once the market starts to think, well, that's behind us, the world didn't explode, they go back to positive outlook, they start spending money again. So the Reserve Bank, again, by putting interest rates up in May, thinks that they can just taper off that that breakout in consumer sentiment. So I think they've probably got their work cut out for them with regard to sentiment because there's a lot of other things that are going to be driving that sentiment now. One of them in particular being that house prices are on the rise, as we know from recent reports coming out of CoreLogic and the other economists and residential property price trackers. So with higher prices and the outlook being more positive for housing now, again, homeowners are going to be more positive about, I guess, the general outlook, and they're more likely to spend more money. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that we need to assume that housing costs and interest rates are not going to drop. I think that there's enough pressure that's going to keep interest rates where they are for a while. And with the higher cost of housing, keep in mind that higher cost of housing means that there's more tax benefits, more depreciation that's going to contribute to the cost of purchase if you are looking at building a new house. Obviously, with interest rates not likely to start coming down, there is a really good incentive to go and negotiate your loan. Banks are very competitively priced right now. The cost of capital has gone up, but they're actually trying to win new business by selling loans at or below their own cost of capital in many cases. If you've been with a bank for 2 years or more, then there's a very good chance that you're paying the bank loyalty tax. It could be as much as 0.75% of your interest rate can be made up of that bank loyalty tax. That if you negotiate or you've got a broker, you can get a better deal and you're going to save a lot of money on your loan. The underlying forces, the housing shortage and rising wages, are going to keep driving rents upwards over the next 6 months. So that's obviously a real key story, but it's really coming from the affordable end of the market, that high rent growth. And that's going to see first home buyers starting to come out of the woodwork and trying to buy into the market. So we'll see prices rising at that affordable end of the market as well. There will be a broad-based recovery. We're going to see the top end of the market start to pop up with faster median house price growth as well. But we know the yields at the upper end of the market are not great. We know that rents aren't rising at the top end of the market as quickly as they are at the affordable end. So we're going to see that affordable end of the market outperforming on rents, as well as once you combine rents with capital growth, total returns will be great at that end of the market. And I use the term the slow media. The slow media is catching on. The window to take advantage of getting in ahead of the market is closing. We know that prices are going up. We're seeing it across many capital cities now. While there was a couple of capital cities that really outperformed in the slower parts of the market, now it's starting to be broader. And as that message gets through the market, consumers are going to be hearing it, and it's going to lead to a pile-in. So competition is going to get harder to buy into the market in the months ahead. So that window to act and get ahead of the market is closing. The media is caught on, so it's obviously a key indicator that the rest of the market will be very quickly following. So there you go. There's a very quick update. What drove the RBA's decisions? What does it mean for the outlook for interest rates, as well as what's driving the housing market, and how do you take advantage of it? I hope that it's been useful. Good luck, and happy investing.